In 2007, Simon Cowell started a TV show called Britain's Got Talent. One of the early contestants, a mobile phone salesman, stood on stage. The judges and the audience were not sure what to think, but as he began to sing, the reaction was overwhelming. Over 2,000 people gave a standing ovation, and the salesman, Paul Potts, would go on to win the competition that season. The piece that he sang for his first and final performances that season was an aria called Nessun Dorma from the opera Turandot by Puccini. For many, that viral video was the first time they had heard that aria, but few know what an aria is. In this video, we will attempt to explain what an aria is by defining it, giving a brief history of the form, identifying its main characteristics, and providing some famous examples outside of Nessun Dorma. The definition of aria. Aria is one of those terms that must be defined in the most general and broadest of ways, because the term has been used in music in various manners over the past 400 years or so. It is like coming up with a definition for the word hammer. There are diverse types of hammers that come in various shapes and sizes, and some are even used for warfare. Still, when most people think of the word hammer, they think of the general purpose ones that most of us have in our household toolboxes. The same goes with the term aria, in that arias come in many different shapes and sizes. But the most general idea of one is a solo song in an opera with orchestral accompaniment. Now, of course, there are examples that don't fit nicely into that pithy and generalized definition, but we must recognize this is what most people think when the term aria is used. An extremely short history of the aria. Singing in medieval Europe was much different than singing is today. Instead of a single pronounced melodic line, there were usually multiple vocal lines intermingling and intertwining, at least with the music that was respected and stylish within the courts of the nobility and the church. That all began to change towards the beginning of the 1600s, especially with the publication of Le Nuove Musique by Giulio Caccini in 1602, which helped popularize a single melodic line in vocal works with instrumental accompaniment. Around the same time, opera was first appearing in Europe, and this new melodic style of singing was being implemented into opera, often labeled as arias. The arias quickly started becoming the most popular and beloved sections of Baroque opera. This is most likely due to arias giving a character a chance to share his or her inner thoughts and emotions with the audience, much like a soliloquy in a play. Arias became so popular that productions began to insert arias from other operas into their own, which is called an insertion aria. Due to their expressive nature, composers began to enhance arias with rich orchestral accompaniment and ambitious vocal melodies. Any emotion or thought could be expressed through an aria. There are depressing arias about death and suicide, happy arias about love and adventure, and even funny arias like the one Leporello sings about delineating the thousands of women his master has slept with in Mozart's Don Giovanni. Arias even started appearing outside of opera, including works by Johann Sebastian Bach, who never composed a single opera, but used the aria in his cantatas and even instrumental works. His work Air on the G string really should be translated as aria on the G string, since aria in Italian simply means air. Sometimes arias appeared in an operatic fashion, but were not composed for an opera, such as A Perfido by Beethoven, which was written for solo soprano and orchestra. This aria depicts a dramatic scene of a woman who is both angry and sad because she was rejected by a lover. Often confused with operas, oratorios sometimes feature arias such as Every Valley Shall Be Exalted from Handel's Messiah. Arias continued to appear in both opera and other forms well into the 20th century. The lines between what people called a song and an aria began to blur as new forms of dramas set to music, such as the Broadway musical, rose in popularity. Take, for instance, Summertime from George Gershwin's opera Porgy and Bess, which is technically an aria, but many people call it a song. The fact that Summertime has been recorded hundreds of times by many musicians from different genres, ranging from country to jazz, is a testament to how diversely the aria can be applied in modern music. The main characteristics of arias. One of the goals of this video is to enable you to correctly identify an aria. No one wishes to use a term incorrectly, so let's talk about when to call a piece an aria. We will be focusing on the main characteristics found in most arias. Arias almost always are set to orchestral accompaniment. Sometimes arias are performed with piano accompaniment if an orchestra isn't available. In many operas, most of the singing is performed with minimal accompaniment, and such passages are called recitatives. Recitatives can sometimes be confused with arias, but rarely do recitatives have full orchestral accompaniment. Arias are for a solo singer. There may be background singers present, such as the famous habanera aria from Bizet's opera Carmen, but usually there is only one person singing the entire aria. The instant that two or more people are singing with equal importance, you should know it isn't an aria. Those are called duets, trios, quartets, and so forth. Arias usually have more sustained notes than recitatives, and often feature more repetition and variation on a single melodic idea. One of the most common types of arias is the da capo aria. Da capo arias utilize a three-part form. The first section presents the main melody, the second section usually contrasts with the first, and the final section sees a return to the main melody. That return was indicated in the score with the Italian phrase da capo, meaning from the beginning. Singers were often expected to improvise embellishments to the melody in the da capo section. This allowed them to show off their singing abilities, granting them a chance to show off what aspects of their voice were the most impressive. The da capo aria was heavily utilized in Baroque operas, cantatas, and oratorios. Later periods used the form, but to a lesser extent. As operatic styles and philosophies changed, so did the aria. It went through periods where composers attempted to make them seem more like a natural extension of the story and characters, instead of the glorified showpieces they had become. Some felt arias drew too much attention away from the story, distracting the audience's attention. Arias sometimes appeared in two-part form instead of da capo form, while others incorporated more complex structures. By the time we get to Wagner's operas of the late 1800s, arias seem to lack any consistent form at all. As mentioned before, 20th century composers began to incorporate folk and popular music forms into arias. Modern experimental composers have continued to help redefine the structure and characteristics of the aria. The one characteristic, though, that remains consistent is it applies to a solo singer, and again, like a soliloquy from a play, allows the audience to experience the inner thoughts and feelings of a character. One final characteristic of arias is that they are not often in English. This is due to arias originating in Italian opera. When opera's popularity spread throughout Europe, operas in other languages began to appear, such as French and German. Because of this, English speakers may wish to examine a translation of the aria's lyrics. It is greatly beneficial to understand the text of an aria, because the music often expresses the various thoughts and feelings during important moments. Of course, the sheer beauty or cleverness of the aria's music can be attractive and interesting, but to get the most out of an aria, one should be familiar with the aria's lyrics and context within the story. Please note that when aria is applied to instrumental music, it has completely different connotations. In an instrumental aria, there is usually a single melody that is repeated with variations. The melody is often song-like, which is probably why composers have chosen to call them arias. These instrumental arias could be used for dancing or musical accompaniment for social events. Their application was varied, and there was no set orchestration. The use of this term for instrumental music was primarily used by Baroque composers, but occasionally later composers used it. A few famous examples. Some arias, like the one mentioned at the beginning of this video, have gained the admiration and adoration of people over the years. Provided next are a few examples of famous arias. Due to copyright restrictions regarding fair use, only small samples of the arias will be provided. You are encouraged to listen to these and other arias in their entirety so you have a better understanding of them.
Ist zu schlecht. Kolter, so viel ist zu schlecht. Weg, nur weg mit eitlen Gaben. Kolter, so viel ist zu schlecht.
Thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe to this channel for more music-related content. If you have a subject about music that you are curious about and would like to see covered on this channel, please leave a comment with your suggestion.